He had been away for days back in the busy offices of Washington, D.C., dealing with flight schedules, safety reports, and 100 little details that kept the skies safe. But now, finally, he was home. His property, a stretch of open land tucked away from the city, had always been his escape. A place where he could think without interruption and breathe without noise. He had looked forward to walking across the grass, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills, and maybe just sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, feeling the quiet settle around him. But as he drove up the familiar dirt road leading to his property, something felt off. At first he thought it was the way the light hit the trees or the unusual hum of distant machinery. Then he saw it. Bright orange construction equipment, half buried in dust, and the unmistakable outline of freshly leveled land. His heart skipped a beat. At first he thought it might be some kind of new road or garden project. But as he got closer, the truth became impossible to ignore. The HOA had built a runway. Not a small strip, not a simple path that could be mistaken for a driveway, but a full-length runway stretching across his land, neat and flat and completely unauthorized. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He parked his truck and stepped out, the wind carrying the scent of fresh dirt and machinery. Every instinct in him screamed that this was wrong. Not only was it his land, but the implications went far beyond property disputes. This was airspace, regulations, safety concerns, things he had spent his life enforcing. And now they had done it right under his nose. He walked closer, his boots crunching on the loose soil, scanning every inch. Tire tracks from heavy machinery were still visible, and small piles of gravel and concrete blocks marked recent work. There were even a few hastily planted markers along the edges, probably meant to guide landing aircraft. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Who would think it was acceptable to build a runway without permission? The question hung in his mind, heavy and frustrating. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of voices. A few HOA members were standing near the edge of the runway, pointing and discussing something in low tones. They hadn't seen him yet. He stayed hidden for a moment, observing. The mix of pride and confusion on their faces told him everything he needed to know. They thought they had done something impressive, a gift to the community perhaps, without realizing the consequences of their actions. Finally, he stepped forward, clearing his throat. The voices stopped, and all eyes turned toward him. The HOA president, a man who always carried himself with a certain kind of smug authority, was the first to speak. "Oh, you're back. We thought we'd surprise you. Isn't this exciting?" The FAA chief didn't answer right away. He felt a storm of emotions rising, anger, disbelief, a touch of fear for what could happen if this went unchecked. He forced himself to take a slow breath. "Exciting isn't the word I would use," he said evenly. "You built a runway on my property. Did you get my permission?" The HOA president hesitated, then shrugged. "Well, no, but we thought the community would benefit. It's not like anyone's flying yet. We just wanted to get it ready." The words made his blood run cold. Not only had they ignored his property rights, but they had also ignored every safety regulation he had worked to uphold for years. The thought of planes taking off and landing on an unapproved runway, without proper safety measures, without anyone qualified overseeing it, was terrifying. He stepped closer to the edge of the runway, his eyes scanning for other issues. There were no clear markings for safety zones, no signs warning of restricted airspace, and nothing that even remotely resembled standard procedures. It was chaos disguised as a project. He could already picture the reports he would have to file if anyone tried to use this. He could imagine the liability, the accidents that could happen, the legal nightmare that was waiting. The HOA members watched him silently, some fidgeting, others attempting a smile, as if their enthusiasm could cover the mistake. But he didn't smile. Instead, he bent down and picked up a small piece of debris, a shard of painted wood from one of the markers. It was like holding a piece of the problem itself. Every inch of this runway screamed carelessness, ignorance, and danger. For a moment, he considered his next move. Confronting them directly could escalate the situation. He had to be careful. It's not only for the sake of maintaining order, but also to ensure that the situation was handled legally and safely. He needed evidence, documentation, and a clear plan. But the immediate reaction, the anger, the disbelief, the frustration, was hard to suppress. This was his land, his rules, and his life's work in aviation safety was being challenged by people who had no understanding of what they were doing. He walked along the edge of the runway, taking notes on his phone, snapping pictures from every angle, noting the equipment left behind, and observing the boundaries. Each step made the reality of the situation more concrete. This wasn't just a surprise. It was a violation. And it wasn't just personal, it was professional. The FAA had strict guidelines about unapproved landing strips, airspace encroachments, and safety measures. Violating those could lead to serious accidents. And accidents were exactly what he needed to prevent. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting long shadows across the land, he felt the weight of the evening settle in. The air was still, almost eerily quiet, except for the occasional creak of construction machinery and the murmur of HOA members. He knew this would not be resolved easily. There would be meetings, legal consultations, inspections, and reports. And yet, even in the growing tension, he felt a resolve building within him. He had faced challenges before, though never like this personal property entangled with federal aviation law. But he would not back down. Before leaving the site, he turned once more to look at the runway. It stretched farther than he could have imagined, neat and smooth, almost mocking in its audacity. He could already see the headlines if this went public. An illegal runway in a quiet community. FAA Chief's own land, a community gone rogue. The irony was sharp, almost bitter, but it was real. He walked back to his truck, mind racing with the first steps of his plan. Document everything. Gather evidence. Contact legal advisors. Notify the FAA about potential hazards. And most importantly, confront the HOA with authority, not anger, to prevent disaster. He knew patience and strategy would be key because mistakes here could be dangerous. Not just for him, but for the entire community, as he drove up the dirt road toward the main house. The sky painted with the colors of dusk, he couldn't help but reflect on how unexpected life could be. One day he was home enjoying peace. The next, his land had been transformed into a symbol of reckless ambition. And he, of all people, was the one who had to fix it. It was a heavy responsibility, but one he was ready to face. After all, protecting lives in the air had always been his calling, and now, protecting his own land demanded the same vigilance and care. That night, he sat on his porch, looking out over the now infamous runway, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. The quiet of the countryside seemed almost ironic, given the chaos that had arrived unannounced. He knew the next days would be difficult, filled with confrontations, investigations, and challenges. But he also knew that with careful thought and unwavering determination, this problem could be solved. And perhaps, just perhaps, the HOA would learn a lesson about boundaries, authority, and the serious nature of what they had attempted. The sun disappeared behind the hills, leaving a twilight glow, and with it, a sense of resolve settled over him, firm and unshakable.